You're listening to Potato Pasta, the best stories from the internet narrated by a human. The following prompt was written by ImperialArmorBrigade. Mech pilots with PTSD often experience a kind of psychosis, in which they begin to feel that the mech is an extension of themselves. To them, being taken out of the machine feels like being stripped of their skin and muscle. The following response was written by ApocalypseOwl. They didn't take it seriously until the Albany incident. Before that, they just saw it as a new kind of PTSD. Nothing to be worried about. Take some antipsychotics and call us in the morning, kind of deal. They didn't pay much heed to those pilots who, after extensive immersion in their mechs, began to become unstable. It started simple enough. The pilots began feeling uncomfortable outside the mechs, felt comforted by the enormous metallic chassis protecting them, to the point that not wearing them felt almost alien. That after months of combat in the mechs on alien worlds, the pilots began to feel that their mechs were a part of them. Of course, there were some official rules against staying too long in them, especially after displaying initial symptoms. But we know what humans are like. We break rules. And those pilots who were truly broken began seeing the mech as a part of them, as a true extension of themselves, their real bodies. They would scream when removed, begging us to stop cutting them out of their flesh. They couldn't stop using those chrome mechs, like an addiction almost. The government and the military didn't really bother much beyond already established protocols in dealing with this problem. Maybe if they had, Albany wouldn't have happened. Maybe if there were proper care for vets, this could have been averted. It is, of course, easy to say such things in hindsight, but still, one has to wonder if they could have treated the Albany 3 in time with proper psychological treatment, then it could have been avoided. But 3 former mech pilots, all with extensive mechanical skills, broke into a mothballed mech depot by Fort Hamilton, near the eastern border of the Ohio contaminated zone. They had met online and had all experienced PTSD MBRD, Mecha Body Replacement Disorder. They found out where their their mechas were stored, and they weren't leaving them this time. They hid themselves well, but during a supply run to Albany, the smallest of the 3 stolen mecha was discovered. Former U.S. Orbital Ranger Amelia Hurtwood, piloting her old Tecumseh-class Scout mecha, a model that had at one point been sold to civilian enthusiasts so it could blend into non-military situations. The mecha in question had all tracking equipment disabled, but Interpol Orbital was already tracking her path back to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. What they found inside was what really worried everyone. Not just the 3 stolen mechas, but hundreds of mechas in various states being repaired. Several discharged pilots with MBRS were either inside the mechas or were feverishly working on them. Several of them fled in the confusion, but the 3 original instigators, the leaders of the deranged pilots, they were captured. That's what the civilians are aware of. They aren't aware of what happened when they tried to extract the pilots. They had believed themselves to be a part of the machine bodies to a point where they felt horribly mutilated and disfigured once extracted, so they'd make sure that this was no longer an option. The inside of each of the mechas were a nightmare. Flesh, brain tissue, mutated human organs, all of it was integrated into the machine. Opening them up had killed the 3 pilots. They had believed themselves a part of their machine bodies and had modified themselves to make it permanent. The Machine Gospel, a manifesto left behind by one of the pilots, former Canadian Royal Mecha Cavalry Medical Officer Jean Dubois, told of the purity of the machine, the methods of which were used to mutate the flesh core, as they called the human body, to become one with the metallic body. The manifesto had already been circulating online with various former mech pilots, and it was catching on. The Albany incident was the beginning of something nightmarish. They had felt incomplete, and perhaps they had not gotten the assistance needed to come to their senses, so they had fixed their own perceived problem of being removed from their bodies. Around the world, survivors of the Albany cell began breaking into places and stealing mechs to assist their fellows. The horror of it, of finding those people, having to disable their electronic parts only to find out that they had been so integrated into the machines that shutting off the mech meant shutting off life. It was antagonizing for the various organizations around a planet still reeling from World War III. Some places tried to help them, but it wouldn't work. Unless caught in the early parts of the process, their bodies couldn't be saved, and they had achieved what they in their madness desired, the strength and protection of a perfect machine body. They still needed food, though the illegal genetic modifications to their bodies meant that their potential for food had increased. Remaining fossil fuels, wood, raw meat, all of it was converted to biofuel, keeping them alive. At the end, with a lack of resources to fix them, they were just chased off into the wilderness, those areas destroyed and ravaged by war or pollution. There they could live with the tribals, the mutants, and the other groups that humanity had rejected. This was a mistake. They congregated on old battlefields, recovering mecha parts, converting abandoned pieces of technology to their use, and changed further. They did not really see themselves as human anymore, but the mission of protecting humanity built into the mechas on a basic purpose level meant that they had began to take over the various communities of survivors in those regions and act as their leaders, their guardians, their teachers, their gods, leading the humans and mutants to better lives, using their skills as engineers, soldiers, and medical personnel to assist these people. Perhaps that was where things should have ended. It should have been that they used their madness for that productive and useful goal, saving those poor, unfortunate individuals who were stuck in the abandoned zones. But they were altering themselves, changing. From my position, I could see it happening. They were forming mated pairs, like people or animals. And soon, smaller, more sleek and well-built mechas would come into being. The process of doing this, I did not like to think about. I didn't like to consider the bizarre machines filled with human flesh, mutated and twisted by broken minds, and how they made more of themselves. Perhaps that was the point where I should have alerted our leaders, but nobody read the reports I made. They were just something that needed to exist for the sake of existing, so if anybody asked, the government could have pointed out that they had a highly skilled department observing the poor psychologically damaged machine people, shown these hypothetical people the reports and everything. Never mind that it was just me and 3 obstructive bureaucrats from the pre-war administration who combined worked about as hard on the problem of machines with broken minds as a corpse would. We should have had the resources to observe closer, to see how they helped the survivors, see the cybernetic implants, see the machines changing the land. They were spreading their machine gospel, their ideas about the synthesis of man and machine. I am a transhumanist myself, got the organ upgrades and everything, but their method, their madness. It is not a good thing. It is not a desirable thing. We didn't have the information that those who were dying in the ruined lands were offered ascension to become a living mecha. To become one was to be tormented until broken, until the mind accepted the machine as its new body. We didn't know about their recovered servers, operating a secret network across the world, about their amazing new designs for their spawn. Not until the government finally made the choice to retake those areas as the pollution was going down. Mecha pilots on the government side were outmatched by the living machines. Their organic machine minds had developed new armaments and defenses that were decades ahead of the best prototypes. The army was sent packing with ease, and the fallen mechas were taken back to be converted, to be shown the light of the machine gospel. That's part of what worries me. There are no WMDs left on the planet. And even if there were, I do not think that the living machines with their fleshy cores of genetically engineered flesh would be truly destroyed by this. Now, we have a hostile, world-spanning superpower with advanced weaponry, access to large quantities of resources that haven't been extracted, and a loyal population of both humans and cybernetic organisms. But what truly and deeply worries me are the small ones, the so-called machine pups. I've seen the Lake House report, the dissections. I'm not a believer in a higher power, but having read that report, with respect, I hope this commission and all involved parties are going to hell. They're much better built than their parents, with better machine flesh integration and much more efficient brains. It's quite difficult to tell when the machine ends and the flesh begins. Even their parts are of a higher quality than anything we've got. They're evolving and growing. Those we have managed to observe consistently with my department's limited resources are not the same size. They're becoming adults. They aren't insane like their parents, and I think that if they wanted to, they could realistically bring down civilization as we know it, and replace it with their ideal version of society. And unless we can convince them that we don't want war, that we truly want to live in peace with them, then yes, I do believe that they will have full control of the Earth within 50 years. And considering that they don't have the basic programming in them telling them to protect humanity like their parents, I can only imagine what manner of world that they will make. But it is clear that we won't have a part in it unless we play nice now, while we've got the chance. Thanks for sticking with me till the end. If you enjoy my narrations, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. If you want to know when new videos come out, hit the bell and make sure you select all notifications. I know it's annoying to ask, but it really does help the channel reach more people. Thank you.